Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Play On podcast. In this bit, we're going to talk about the football, and in particular, we're going to talk about the Ulster Championship match between Donegal and Down. It finished 2-25 to Donegal, 1-12 to Down. Donegal looking very impressive in parts. They scored 2 goals and 20 points from play, albeit, in my opinion, against a very poor Down side. And I have Luke here with me to discuss this game. Luke, what did you make of this one?
Very comfortable for Donegal, I suppose. It was kind of summed up the weekend really a little bit of the first day out in the provincial championships kind of seems to be not the most competitive games, but yeah, so like job done for Donegal, did everything that they had to do, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And it was always going to be a little bit like this. The first game, of course, in the Ulster Championship for 2021 for Donegal, even though they've absolutely bet Down out the gate, a Division 2 side, like a team that obviously have secured their status in Division 2 for another year, and Donegal have blitzed them. You have to remember that Donegal did this last year as well. Like they hammered Armagh, they beat Tyrone in a real kind of, they grit their teeth in that game. They looked excellent. And then they ended up not winning the Ulster Championship after all that. So, same again with Donegal this year. I'm a bit once bitten, twice shy with Donegal. Like I'm not buying into the hype as much this year because I know that they have it in them to have a catastrophic performance like they did in last year's Ulster final.
Yeah, completely. I think that's the biggest question for them going into this year is if they can kind of prove that wrong, that kind of assumption about them. Like I know they had a similar kind of start to Ulster last year. So, those questions still aren't fully answered. But, yeah, it was job done. Like, the only concern, I suppose, is Murphy. Questions about Murphy's fitness. Like, I know he came off fairly early in this game. And, going forward, it'll be interesting to see what happens kind of with him, how he'll be managed, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to ask you this question now. So, everyone knew that Michael Murphy was injured going into this game. He wasn't at 100%. He started the game really well. He kicked a lovely point off his left foot that put Donegal 3 points to 0 up. And yet he still came off, quite early. He came off after 29 minutes. And yet one thing that I'm just wondering here is that it was said, on the Sunday game punditry that Donegal were always going to win this game, barring a terrible performance. And you wonder, was it worth their while starting Murphy? Now, I know that, if they left him out and Down managed to hang in the game for a bit longer, there would be criticisms of Declan Bonner. But for a game which Donegal are, without Murphy, in my mind, they're still favourites to win. They saw what they did to Down even after Murphy went off. Was it worth Donegal's while to start such a key player? Because obviously now there's a chance that he's actually made the injury worse.
Yeah, it's a hard one to know. I suppose you have to, if he was cleared by the backroom team and stuff like the medical assistants in the backroom team, I suppose you have to just go off that. So it's look, it's obviously perhaps it hasn't paid off at all, and maybe he has aggravated it. We're not fully sure yet, but it's like they probably still would have had enough with the likes of McBurty and Brennan up front to outscore the likes of a Down, and they should have had. They probably would have been very, very comfortable like the way it was, even if he didn't start. So it didn't really work out, but I suppose it comes down to how the management team felt before the game, and if they felt that he was ready to go, then I suppose then they'll stand by their decision.
Yeah, exactly. And the other key thing is, well, the key, weakness, if you like, in Donegal's game at the weekend. Like, we're judging Donegal as All-Ireland contenders. We're judging them as one of the top 4 teams in the country. We're judging them on the same level as a Dublin and a Kerry. There was a period at the start of the second half where Donegal looked so vulnerable the second that Down introduced a bit of pace into their attack. We're talking about the Quaylon Mooney goal just after the start of the second half. Very nice finish from Quaylon Mooney. He's such an athlete. He spent time playing over Australian rules football. But, there was nothing special about this Down move. It was just a hand pass over the top by Liam Kerr. Mooney just ran onto it completely unchallenged and just slotted it in past Sean Patton. And then 1 minute after that, another very good Down attack with Quaylon Mooney doing pretty much the exact same thing. He managed to get it across to Ryan McAvoy. Brilliant save by Sean Patton. If Down had got that goal, Paddy Tally said it himself. They would have been 5 points behind. That would have been 2 goals in a row to start the second half in the first 5 minutes of the second half. And Donegal, I still think that they would have won, but they would have been a little bit ropey. And as they go into, in my opinion, harder games, like the next game up is against Derry, and I think that's going to be way harder, coming up against a team which has such momentum. And of course, coming up against their former manager, Rory Gallagher, who will know them so well. He'll know all those defenders really well. You might know a few weaknesses that we don't know. It looked very concerning there that they had pretty much their full defence back. They had Neil McGee back in there, they had Stephen McMenamin, they had Ryan McHugh, and yet Down were able to carve them apart in the start of the second half.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's the same kind of issues. There's a few problems with this in the league as well, with fellas running through the centre of their defence. They shipped a lot of goals in the league as well. So, yeah, maybe they still haven't fully resolved that. And I suppose that is the concern, is that against the bigger teams that they will be afraid that, that the runners can kind of carve open that centre. So, yeah, that needs to be sorted, and that would probably be the main kind of concern surrounding Donegal, I suppose, going into that Derry game.
Yeah. And speaking of players carving open the heart of the defence, the Jamie Brennan goal was a quality finish from Jamie Brennan, top left corner, he picked it out. But Jamie Brennan took 12 steps, and even though, he looked like he was stumbling forward for half of them steps and potentially could have been getting fouled on the way, to let a player take 12 steps is just an absolute joke. Like, how can we sit there actually and tell people that, after 4 steps, it's, a foul? If over and over and over again, players are always doing this, every club player knows that you're actually taught really by your coaches to take, 5 or 6 steps before you do a bounce or a solo. So, is this time that the rule that we take another look at this rule?
Well, I suppose it's always been the way, kind of like, is that when a fella's run through into goal, that if there's kind of a bit of contact on him, that potentially could be looked like a foul. Referees they give the benefit of the doubt and a few extra steps and stuff like that, and then it kind of leads to a situation where like a fella is maybe taking 10 steps or so, but then rather than giving the free in and infuriating kind of the crowd, the referee plays it on and then he takes his goal and stuff like that. So look, it's I don't see how it can be fixed really. Referees, because I suppose the second that he takes the extra step, just stop it and then give a 30-yard free in, but then there's no advantage to the forward whatsoever. So it's a difficult one really, I suppose, and I don't think there's going to be any real changes brought in about it, because I just think it would cause further kind of frustration around slowing down the game and removing goal chances.
It leaves itself open to being inconsistent, and then there will be a game where a referee, gives a decision which other referees wouldn't give, that's going to cost the county hugely.
Yep, absolutely, and it is another kind of one of these rules that kind of does provoke a lot of debate about it. But I think it's going to be a debate that does continue for a long more time to come.
Yeah, definitely. As for Donegal, the positives that we would take from this game, 225 is a massive tally to rack up, 220 of it from play. As I've mentioned, they did beat a Division 2 team. Now they're into the next round of the Ulster Championship. They did look good in patches. The one thing which always sticks out to me about Donegal is their long range shooting. Guys like Kieran Thompson, Michael Langan in particular. The scores that these lads are able to pick out from long distances is a huge ace up their sleeve.
Yep, completely. And then you add in the likes of Ora McNeilish and Michael Murphy as well. If they get Murphy back in fit, they could score all day for if they wanted to. I suppose that's reflected in 225 tally. So it's look, the forwards aren't the question for Donegal. They know that they could be able to live with any team. Kind of, it's just they're at the need to shore up at the other end. And I think that's going to be the questions that are still going to be put to them all the time. And I know 112 is not the worst tally to concede, but I don't think they probably didn't answer all those questions at the weekend as well. So I think that's the big kind of takeaway for them at the weekend, and that's where their attention should go, I suppose, against what's going to be a pretty lively Derry forward line the next day out.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've both in agreement that the Derry test is going to be way bigger than this Down game. If you were Declan Bonner now, what risk would you take with selecting Michael Murphy for this game? Obviously, he's a huge player for Donegal. If he's not fully fit, obviously Derry's midfield is so powerful, like Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley, well documented how good they are in midfield. If Michael Murphy isn't there, are Donegal vulnerable to a Derry shock now without their captain being there? Personally, I think they're vulnerable to the shock even if Murphy plays. Derry are looking so good. And yeah, what percentage in your mind around, like, would you take a gamble on starting Michael Murphy?
Well, I think if Murphy's been training at all, kind of, I think he starts. Like, I think if he's been involved at all in any sessions, like he's the team captain, and you have to go with him. Like, you could try and say that you save him for like a potential Ulster final and stuff like that, but you have to get there. And I think if Murphy is in any way fit, I think he has to play. So yeah, I like that's what I think, and like that's probably the reasoning for why he did play at the weekend as well, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Donegal were just nervous about, another upset like they had last year against Cavan, and they wanted to make sure that they got the job done this year, and they did. But now with Derry, it's definitely a bit more risky than it was against Down, in my opinion. And I think Murphy will have to play if he's in any way fit, and hopefully he pulls through, because you don't like to see a player with the quality that he has go off injured. It's a blow to Donegal, but it's a blow to the football championship. He's such a magnificent player. As for Down, it's crazy how much time changes things, in football. That I know it's a good while ago, and there's very few players who were playing back then who are still playing now. But 2010, Down made the All Ireland final, and they lost by a point to Cork. And back then, Donegal played Armagh in a qualifier and got absolutely destroyed. 1 year later, Donegal hired Jim McGuinness. We all know what happened then. And Down have kind of settled into a steady decline. How do you think now? Because this game just showed the difference in standards now between the two counties. How do you think they've managed to pull back from this? And if they can, how long do you think it's going to take them? Do you believe in Paddy Tally as the man to do it?
It's a tough one to know. Like, it wasn't a good league campaign this year as well, and then like early exit from the championship, that's their season done. Like, it's been a pretty forgettable year, I suppose, for them. I don't know what happens. Maybe there might be a change, kind of manager wise, over in the off season. I suppose it's kind of hard to justify the same kind of structure going forward based off the results this year. So it's kind of bleak for them based off like that the gap that's kind of there. You look at the teams that are competing mostly for Ulster, and Down would be a long, long way down that list. So maybe not fully sure if the players are really there at the moment, but yeah, they probably should be doing better than what they are now. There's no way they should be being beaten by as much as they were at the weekend. And the game, they were never really in it at all, and from their perspective, really, really disappointing. So yeah, I'm sure they'll have plenty of discussion about the future of football up there and throughout the winter anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it will be interesting to see how they manage to bounce back from this, because in my mind, they do have a young team. This was definitely a lesson in terms of the difference in class between Division 1 and Division 2 even. And yeah, I think they've got a long, long way to go to get back on Donegal's level. And yeah, it would be interesting to see. Personally, I think Tally is a good coach. I think he needs to evolve their attacking game, because they're defending, for such a defensive game plan, they still conceded 225. I think personally they have to come out of their shell a little bit. Let the likes of Barry O'Hagan have full trust in what he can do. Let the Johnston brothers have the same. Get their best six forwards out and just have a go. Every other county seems to be doing it. Down are stuck in the past. That's the way forward for them. And yeah, personally, I think that, they have a great heritage. They've had some amazing days. First county, of course, from the six counties to win the All Ireland. Personally, I think Down should, let their forwards have a bit more freedom. And I think that's the way forward for them. But anyway, guys, that is our review of the Donegal versus Down match that took place in the Ulster preliminary round. We will come back and we will talk about the Leinster football action.